Have you ever found yourself in the middle of a conversation with your partner and suddenly realize you're not just speaking completely different languages, but it feels like you're, I don't know, operating on entirely different software?
Oh, absolutely. It's this universally frustrating experience, right?
Right.
And it usually leaves both people just sitting there feeling totally baffled, wondering how they could possibly be so misunderstood by someone they know so incredibly well.
Exactly. I mean, you say one thing, they hear another, and before you know it, a completely innocent question about dinner has somehow spiraled into this massive referendum on your entire relationship.
Right. Yeah, we've all been there.
Well, welcome to today's deep dive. Our mission today is to really decode these eternal misunderstandings between men and women. So if you're listening right now and feeling completely stuck in a communication loop with your partner, we've got you covered.
We really do.
We are pulling our insights from a truly eye-opening source today, which is the book Why Men Lie and Women Cry by Allan and Barbara Pease. And, I know what some of you might be thinking.
Right, the whole men and women thing.
Yeah, exactly. Exploring the differences between men and women can sometimes sound like this reductive, I don't know, 1990s stand-up comedy routine.
Yeah.
But we are going to look at the actual evolutionary biology, the brain science, and the hidden psychology that dictate how we interact.
Which is so important because before we can start debugging the behavioral software of a relationship, we actually have to understand the biological hardware of the brain.
Okay, the hardware.
Right. The source material points to some really fascinating MRI brain scan data that physically maps out just how different our hardware really is. Like, when you look at a woman's brain scan during communication, you see vastly more active areas dedicated to speech and language.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it's spread across both hemispheres.
Wait, so they're talking about actual physical differences in the brain's architecture here, not just, men are from Mars, women are from Venus. Metaphor.
So completely physical. Yeah. The book describes the female brain's organization as multitracking.
Multi-tracking, okay.
Because speech and language are processed in multiple areas, a woman's brain is organized to juggle several unrelated topics simultaneously. I mean, a woman can be running a computer program, talking on the telephone,
Right.
listening to a second conversation happening behind her, drinking a cup of coffee, and in a single sentence, basically weave together a complex family tree issue with a sudden work crisis.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because, honestly, it feels like trying to run a complex, modern, multitasking operating system on a machine that might be biologically hardwired to process just one intense, high-priority task at a time.
That is a perfect analogy, actually, because the brain scans of men show an organization built for monotracking.
Well, monotracking.
Yeah, the male brain is highly compartmentalized. It's designed to concentrate intensely on one single task at a time. I mean, have you ever noticed that a man will literally reach out and turn down the car radio volume when he needs to read a map? Or even just look for a specific house number?
Yes. Oh my gosh, I've always laughed at that. Like, does the loud music physically make it harder to see?
Well, to a monotracked brain, yes, it kind of does.
Wait, really?
Yeah, it requires singular focus, and the auditory input actually competes with the visual processing.
Okay, but hold on. I have to play devil's advocate here for a second. Are we sure this is actual biological hardwiring and not just how we're socialized? Because society constantly tells girls from a young age to be social and communicative, while boys are pushed toward singular tasks and building things.
No, it's a great question, but the authors point to the evolutionary why behind this hardware difference to explain its biological roots. So if you go back to the prehistoric savanna, men evolved as hunters.
Right.
To survive, their primary contribution was the ability to track prey and hit a moving target. And that requires absolute singular focus, tunnel vision. I mean, if a hunter gets distracted by a beautiful sunset, he starves.
Makes sense.
But women, on the other hand, evolved as nest defenders. Their survival and the survival of their offspring depended on the ability to constantly monitor a wide peripheral environment.
Ah, so taking everything in at once.
Exactly. Tracking multiple elements simultaneously to ensure safety from predators while gathering food.
So if you're listening to this and wondering why your partner completely tunes you out while he's typing an email, it's not malice. It's just the hunter brain locking onto a target, which actually that makes me think of one of the biggest crash points in any domestic relationship, which is nagging.
Oh, definitely.
Right, because to a multitracking brain, constantly reminding someone about a series of household tasks is just normal operating procedure. It's monitoring the nest.
Precisely. The multi-track brain sees it as caring and organizing, but to a monotracking brain, receiving this list of disconnected tasks while trying to focus on something else, it's a system overload. It is perceived as a relentless, dripping tap.
Yeah, a dripping tap.
And historically, the text notes that society has been incredibly harsh on women for this exact biological clash. I mean, until the 19th century, laws in some places actually allowed a husband to have his wife legally punished for scolding or nagging.
You're kidding?
Yeah.
Legally punished for reminding someone to do their chores.
Yes, unfortunately. They used a device called the ducking stool.
The ducking stool.
Yeah, the source mentions a specific case, the last recorded one actually, of a woman named Jenny Pipes in England in 1809. She was strapped to a chair and publicly dunked into a river simply for nagging her husband.
That is horrifying.
It really is.
But it highlights how deep and historically fraught this friction really is. So, okay, we can't change the hardware. How do we fix the software? Because if a woman genuinely needs her partner to help around the house, how does she communicate that without triggering the monotrack brain to throw up all its defensive walls?
Well, the authors offer a very modern, hardware-friendly solution to bypass those defenses. It's called the me-I technique.
The me-I technique.
Right, because usually a frustrated partner might say, "You never take out the trash, you are so lazy." And that word "you" instantly triggers the hunter's defensive walls. It feels like a direct attack on their competence.
So how does the me-I technique change the code, so to speak?
You change the subject of the sentence to your own feelings. So you say, "When the trash builds up, I feel overwhelmed and I feel like my need for a clean space isn't valued."
Oh, I see.
It completely changes the input you're feeding the system. It removes the judgment of their character and instead presents a problem about your feelings. And remember, the hunter brain loves to solve problems.
Okay, yeah, that makes total sense for chores. But what happens when the problem isn't something tangible like the trash? Because it feels like the second someone starts venting about their day, the guy instantly turns into a project manager.
And that leads to the classic trap of unsolicited advice. Because men base a massive amount of their self-worth on their ability to solve problems. I mean, it's their evolutionary purpose. They apply it to absolutely everything.
Right.
The book provides a great case study of a couple named Sarah and Andy to illustrate this. So Sarah comes home exhausted, complaining about her boss and the stress of a massive project called the Seinfeld account.
Let me guess.
Yeah.
She just wants to be heard, and he wants to fix the Seinfeld account.
Exactly. Sarah is looking for empathy, but Andy's monotrack brain instantly goes into problem-solving mode. He starts giving her a step-by-step action plan on how to confront her boss, what to say, and how to reorganize her schedule.
And I'm assuming Sarah explodes, because from her perspective, it feels like he isn't listening to her emotions at all. He's invalidating her feelings by just trying to fix them.
Yep.
Meanwhile, Andy probably feels completely rejected because he offered his best skilled problem solving and she shot it down.
It's a perfect mismatch. They are both trying to help their relationship, but they are using completely incompatible manuals.
It's so frustrating. But okay, if men are biologically wired to be these incredible problem solvers, I have to ask about a global cliche. Why do men famously refuse to ask for directions? Getting lost is a spatial problem that needs solving.
Well, because for a hunter, failing to find his way is a failure of his primary evolutionary skill. Navigating the environment was quite literally life or death. But there's a biological component here that is just incredible. The source notes that roughly 1 in 3 men can actually sense magnetic north.
Hold on. A literal compass?
Yeah.
Like a homing pigeon?
Yeah?
How does that even work in human biology?
It actually comes down to iron. According to the research cited in the book, many men have a specific concentration of iron in the right hemisphere of the brain, which is the spatial mapping center.
Wow.
And this iron interacts subtly with the Earth's magnetic field, giving them an innate biological sense of direction.
That is wild. I had no idea that was a physical reality. So what about women?
Well, tracing back to those nest-defending days where they didn't venture far past the horizon of the camp, women evolved to navigate by landmarks.
Okay, landmarks.
Right. Their brains map relationships between objects. So if a man tells a woman to head north for 5 miles, she might get lost. But if he tells her to turn right at the giant oak tree and left at the pink building, she'll find it instantly.
And for the man, when he is lost, stopping to ask for directions is basically admitting to the tribe that his internal compass is completely broken.
Exactly. So he would rather drive in circles for an hour than admit his biology is failing him.
Okay, so we have the hunter trying to solve Sarah's work problems, the hunter refusing to ask for directions, And then they finally get home. And what does he do? He sits on the couch and just frantically flips through the TV channels. It drives women crazy.
It does.
The remote control is like the ultimate weapon of domestic annoyance. Is this a hunting thing too?
It is actually. Channel flicking is the modern version of prehistoric fire gazing.
Fire gazing.
Yeah. For thousands of years, men returned from a highly stressful hunt and sat around a fire, staring into the flickering flames in this trance-like state. It allowed them to relieve stress, shut down their hypervigilance, and rebuild their energy.
They weren't ignoring their families. They were basically self-medicating. The source even shares an amazing anecdote to prove how deeply ingrained this is.
Oh, I love a good anecdote. What is it?
So, anthropologists visited a remote tribe of Kalahari Bushmen, people living very traditional hunter-gatherer lifestyles. They introduced a solar-powered satellite dish and a television to the village. And what did the men of the tribe do?
Don't tell me.
They sat around in their loincloths, passing the remote control, channel surfing in total silence, just like guys in a modern living room in suburban America.
That is hilarious. The medium changed, but the fire-gazing instinct is identical. But practically speaking, if you're a woman sitting next to a guy who is deep in a fire-gazing trance and you really need to talk about your day, how do you break through without being accused of nagging? Are we just victims of our biology here?
Not at all. The text offers a brilliant, actionable communication tool for this exact scenario. When a woman needs to talk, she can simply ask the man, "Would you like me to listen as a boy or a girl?"
Listen as a boy or girl, how does that help? Well, it instantly clarifies the rules of engagement for his brain. Or conversely, the man can ask, do you want me to listen as a boy or a girl?
Right.
If she says, as a girl, he knows his job is simply to offer empathy, maybe pour a glass of wine and say, that sounds awful, no solutions required.
And if she says, as a boy,
Then he has the green light to offer his problem-solving skills and action plans.
that is so simple, but it completely rewrites the software rules in real time. It tells his brain exactly what program to run.
So we've talked a lot about the hunter at home. What happens when we take these behaviors out of the house? Because if he's a hunter in the living room, what happens when you send him to, say, a shopping mall?
It is the ultimate clash of evolutionary programming. When men shop, they are executing a quick kill.
A quick kill.
Yeah, a man can walk into a department store, buy a suit, 3 shirts, a belt, and shoes in 8 minutes, and that wardrobe will last him a decade. His tunnel vision takes him straight to the target, he executes the transaction, and he leaves. Which is the exact opposite of how women generally shop. Because biologically, women are gatherers.
Right.
The goal isn't necessarily a quick kill. It's to wander, feel the fabrics, examine the options, compare prices, and just take their time. Often, there isn't even a specific goal in mind. The journey of gathering is the point. Which explains why if you send a man to the grocery store with a specific list for milk and eggs, his gathering instinct is so non-existent that he comes back with a random tin of sardines and a bag of marshmallows.
Because he spotted a bargain on the end cap. It was a rogue quick kill.
Exactly.
And the biological hardwiring behind this difference is incredibly deep. The source references a really fascinating study involving chickens to show how hormones dictate this behavior.
Okay, you're going to have to explain how a chicken study relates to me buying groceries.
Well, researchers wanted to see if foraging behavior was learned or chemical. When female chickens were injected with male hormones, their eating behavior changed drastically. Yeah. Normally, they would peck around, gathering various seeds slowly, but with the male hormone, they exhibited singular focus. They suddenly began eating only the red seeds first, moving rapidly from one red seed to the next until they were completely gone and completely ignoring the rest of the food.
Wow, so the hormone actually rewired their visual processing to lock onto a single target color.
Yes. The male hormone dictated a linear, target-focused approach to gathering. It just proves how deeply chemistry influences our daily behavior.
That explains so much. But okay, if hunting for a quick kill at the mall or fire gazing at the TV are ways men relieve stress, what happens when those options aren't available? Like, how does a monotrack brain process stress out in the wild?
They use humor. Specifically, men are highly prone to using tragic or gross jokes to process stress.
Really? Why gross or tragic jokes specifically?
If we connect this to the biological big picture, laughter is fundamentally a startled fear reaction. So when a man tells a tragic or gross joke, the resulting laughter triggers the brain to release endorphins.
Oh, and endorphins are the body's natural painkillers.
Exactly. They act as a form of self-anesthesia. Because men are culturally and biologically discouraged from showing vulnerability or crying, they use dark humor to process emotional pain or stress.
But jokes can only go so far, right? What happens when the stress is too much or direct communication completely breaks down and humor isn't enough? Because that's when things usually get highly emotional. Let's talk about crying.
Crying is a uniquely human behavior, at least when it comes to expressing emotion. And biologically, tears serve three distinct purposes. First, they act as an eye wash, containing an enzyme called lysozyme that kills bacteria.
Sure, the basic biological maintenance.
Right. But the second purpose is fascinating. Emotional tears literally excrete stress toxins from the body.
Wait, stress toxins, you mean emotional tears are physically, chemically different from the tears I get when I have dust in my eye?
Completely different. Emotional tears contain high levels of hormones like prolactin and adrenocorticotropic hormones, as well as leucine and enkephalin, which is a natural painkiller.
Wow.
When you cry from emotion, your body is literally flushing out the chemical byproducts of severe stress.
That's amazing.
But the third purpose of tears is the most complex for relationships. They act as a powerful emotional signal designed to trigger oxytocin, the bonding and caretaking hormone, in anyone who sees them.
So it's basically taking a biological SOS signal, your body flushing out toxins, and weaponizing it against someone else's empathy. Which brings us to a really dark part of the book, which is emotional blackmail.
Yes, the book outlines this cycle of emotional blackmail perfectly. It generally follows a strict pattern. It starts with a demand, followed by a threat, which is often implied rather than spoken, then immense guilt, and finally, compliance.
Can you walk us through how that actually looks in practice?
The case study of a couple named Greg and Rosemary illustrates this perfectly. Rosemary wanted her frail mother to move in with them, knowing Greg would hate the idea. So instead of having a rational discussion where he could voice his concerns, she set a trap. She planned a nice dinner, waited until he was relaxed, and then suddenly broke down in tears. She refused to tell him what was wrong at first, which rapidly built his anxiety.
Oh, that's rough.
And when she finally revealed it, couched in sobs about how she couldn't bear to see her mother alone and suffering, Greg was completely overwhelmed by guilt.
Because his biology is screaming at him to fix the distress signal right in front of him.
Exactly. His biological response to her tears overrode his logical boundaries, and he complied. He agreed to let her mother move in just to stop the crying.
And once that precedent is set, the blackmailer knows exactly which buttons to push next time. It's incredibly manipulative.
Yeah.
But I have to ask, is this just a tactic women use? Because I know plenty of guys who manipulate emotions to get what they want.
Oh, men absolutely do this too. The source shares the story of Damien and Erica to show how men deploy emotional blackmail, often to manipulate women into physical intimacy.
Oh, I see.
In their case, Damien pushed for sex early in the relationship. When Erica said she wasn't ready and wanted to wait, Damien didn't argue logically. Instead, he feigned heartbreak. He acted as though her refusal meant she didn't care about him, playing the deeply wounded victim.
Oh, that's insidious.
Yeah.
Because he's targeting her nest defender biology.
Exactly. Erica's natural, biological, maternal instinct to soothe his emotional pain kicked in. She felt guilty for hurting him, and she gave in to the blackmail.
If you're listening to this and realizing you're caught in one of these traps, how do you get out? Because it feels impossible in the moment when someone is crying or acting wounded.
The key, according to the psychologists in the text, is to completely disarm the emotional escalation by maintaining firm, unemotional boundaries. When a blackmailer says, "If you really love me, you'd do this," the most powerful response is simply, "Well, that's your choice to feel that way." Or, "I can see you're really upset. Let's discuss this when you're calmer."
You just refuse to play the game.
You refuse to feed the guilt cycle. You don't get angry. You don't fight back emotionally. You don't justify your position. You just hold the line calmly.
So what does this all mean? Let's say you avoid the emotional blackmail and you use the me-I technique. Even then, deep resentments can still build up in a relationship because of one massive, invisible barrier the book talks about. It turns out men and women literally use completely different scoreboards to evaluate the health of the relationship.
This is perhaps one of the most profound and practical insights in the entire source material. It's the secret point scoring system.
The secret scoreboard.
Put simply, men score contributions based on the magnitude, the size, and scope of the action. Women score based on frequency.
The book mentions a 30-day experiment with a couple named Brian and Lorraine. Can you explain how their scoreboards mismatched?
Well, Brian is a finance broker working very long hours. In his mind, earning the massive paycheck to support the family is worth, say, 30 points on the relationship scoreboard.
Okay, 30 points.
Spending his entire Saturday fixing the kid's bike or reconfiguring the complex stereo system, he scores that as another huge chunk of points. The hunter brain sees the big picture, the major
But
kills.
Lorraine isn't scoring his big kills the way he thinks she is, right?
Not at all. Lorraine's scoreboard operates on an entirely different evolutionary metric. To a woman's nest-defending brain, which evolved to track fine details and maintain constant vigilance, every single action, regardless of its size, is worth exactly 1 point.
1 point.
Brian spending all day fixing the stereo, that is 1 point. But Lorraine giving Brian his coat when it's cold, 1 point. Dropping him at the door in the rain, 1 point. Make him a cup of coffee, 1 point.
It's like they're playing completely different sports on the exact same field.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy buys a massive diamond ring, thinks he just hit a grand slam, and figures he can coast on the bench for a month because he's up by 4 runs. Meanwhile, the woman thinks he just hit a single, and the inning is still going. According to this logic, if a man buys a single rose, he gets 1 point. If he buys a bouquet of 3 dozen roses, he still only gets 1 point.
That is exactly the dynamic. But if he buys one rose every week for 12 weeks, that is 12 points. For women, it's not the magnitude of the action that matters. It is the frequency and the constant daily thought behind it.
Which explains why guys get so blindsided.
They do. Men assume the relationship scoreboard is kept by magnitude, so they often think the score is perfectly even. They are completely shocked when their partner suddenly explodes in resentment over something small, because in her mind, she has been doing dozens of small things every single day, and the score is currently 30-1.
It's the ultimate blind spot. If a man actually knew the score was 30-1, his competitive hunter nature would probably make him want to even it up immediately. But he literally doesn't see the points she's tallying. Which brings us back to the core mission of this deep dive. Succeeding in a relationship, according to the biology and psychology we've explored today, doesn't mean you have to rewire your brain or change who you fundamentally are.
It means learning to speak your partner's language and read their specific software manual. It is about empathy, rooted in biological reality. When we stop expecting the other person's brain to work exactly like ours, we remove the judgment. We stop seeing malice or laziness where there is simply a difference in hardware.
It means understanding that when he's staring blankly at the TV, he's just fire-gazing to relieve his stress, not ignoring you. It means knowing that if you want her to navigate, you should point out the giant oak tree instead of magnetic north. And it means realizing that bringing home a single rose on a random Tuesday is worth its weight in gold on the secret relationship scoreboard.
Exactly. Empathy through understanding.
Which leaves us with a pretty fascinating thought to ponder as we wrap up. We've spent this entire deep dive looking at how our brains are still so rigidly wired for the prehistoric savanna hunting zebras, gathering berries, defending the physical nest. But our world is changing infinitely faster than our biology ever could. As we move increasingly into purely virtual spaces and digital interactions, how will these relationships adapt? Will living and working in the metaverse finally force us to shed these evolutionary quirks and operate on a truly universal software? Or will we just end up as digital avatars, still misreading the secret scoreboard and still arguing over who left the virtual toilet seat up? You're still operating on different software, yet have to decide if you're willing to read the manual.